Move on over, Canon C200, and goodbye, because we are actually selling this camera today. Camera wasn't in the box. I didn't just drop a $6,000, $5,000 camera on the floor inside a box. Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Zephan Moses Blacksburg, and today I want to share with you a couple of sample video clips so that you can see what the Canon C70 looks like when we have the brand new Canon EOS R 0.71x adapter added on to it so that we can mount our Canon EF lenses to the R mount of the Canon C70. I realized that in the video that I created yesterday, I kind of teased this mount and showed you how to install it, but in reality, it doesn't matter if we have the mount on hand or not. That's just going to make people jealous. The truth is, we need to see what this mount does once we put it on the camera. So we're going to switch cameras out here. This is actually the last time I'm using the Canon C200. We'll switch over to the Canon C70, and I'll let you guys know any other changes or adjustments that I make so that you can tell what footage that you're looking at. So this is the Canon C70, and you can see all of my settings that I have on screen. I'm going to pop them up for you here. And I wrote them down just so I can go over them with you. But first of all, this is a BT709 color profile. I'm not shooting in log or doing anything crazy. I just wanted to get some sort of sense of what the camera is doing with the adapter, and then later down the road we'll be able to test with log and being able to color grade. But just straight out of the camera, 709, wanted to see what we could do here. This is the XF-AVC 10-bit. Our resolution is 4096 by 2160. We're using long GOP or long GOP, which is 160 megabits per second. And on the 128 gigabyte pro grade SD cards that I bought, we're getting 106 minutes of record time. And then on the second card, because you can record proxies, we're getting 711 minutes of record time. And this is all at 2398 frames per second. So as you can see here, I'm going to put the information up on screen. This is using the Canon 24-70 f2.8 lens, but you might notice a couple things are different. One, I'm wide open at 24 millimeters, and we're at 17 millimeters, the camera is telling us. So now that we've added the Canon C70 adapter, the new 0.71x adapter, it's actually seeing this as a 17 millimeter equivalent. And then on top of that, you can see in the bottom, in the center, we've got an f2.0. So this is a 2.8 lens, but with the adapter added on to the Canon C70, it's now becoming an f2.0 lens. Now, I'll leave it up to you to tell me how you feel the depth of field looks right now. As you can tell, I've kind of widened our view, so I didn't want to zoom in. I didn't want to show you anywhere in the middle and give you a false sense of what you're getting out of this. This is at 24 millimeters on the lens, but in camera it's basically showing up as 17 millimeters now that we've added in the adapter. So just wanted to show you that example. Now I'll go ahead and hop over to 24 millimeters in camera, and I'll tell you what that equivalent is, and then we'll go to the long range, which is probably going to be a little too far zoomed in, maybe a close-up on my face, but just so you can see what this adapter is doing. All right, we'll be back in one sec. So now you can see what happens when I bring the camera towards 24 millimeter equivalent. So this is 24 millimeters in camera with the adapter. The lens itself is actually closer to about 33 millimeters, give or take. And you'll notice here that it's actually at 25. I had some trouble trying to get it at exactly 24. So it was kind of jumping between 23 to 25. Totally okay by me, but just wanted to kind of show you, here's the perspective that we're getting at 24 millimeter equivalent, but closer to 33/35 millimeters in the lens while we're using the brand new 0.71x adapter, just so you can kind of get a picture of what's happening here, see what everything looks like, and get an idea. Next stop, I'm going to show 70 millimeters, so the far end of the lens. This is as far as the lens zooms in. Let's go ahead and see what the equivalent is in camera now that we've added this adapter. So now you're seeing the 70 millimeter in the lens, right? So I'm at the furthest end, all the way zoomed in on the Canon 24 to 70 f2.8 lens. But with this adapter now, look at what it's telling us. You can see that right up here in the top corner, 50 millimeters. So the equivalent that we're getting now, because the new 0.71x, sorry, name dropping that a lot, because the new adapter is now on the Canon C70, we're actually getting 50 millimeters in camera. So this is something that you'll want to consider as you move forward in your purchases of lenses in working with the C70, especially if you're going to be using this adapter for the older EF line of lenses and not using the newer RF lenses. This is the equivalent that we're going to get. So it's roughly becoming a 17 to 50 millimeter lens instead of the 24 to 70 that we are used to. And so that's with the adapter added on. Of course, things will be a little bit different if you're using the RF lenses and you're not using this adapter that acts as a speed booster. Now, as you can see in the bottom right there, I'm still at f2.0. I just wanted you to get an idea of the shallow depth of field that we're getting here, especially zoomed in now so you can see depth of field at the far end of the camera and get a good idea of how things are looking there. Now, autofocus is going to be another question moving forward, and we'll want to test that out in a little bit, but just for the purposes of this video, I want to show you a couple more lenses. So the next lens that you'll see is the Canon 16 to 35 millimeter. It is also an f2.8 lens, so you'll see that in just a second. So we're now using the Canon 16 to 35 millimeter lens, and as you can see, this is super wide when you add on the adapter to the new Canon C70. I haven't changed any of my settings in camera, only the lens, and I haven't changed where the camera is placed. I kept it on the tripod, it did not move, so you can see this is what a 16 millimeter on the lens will get you, and actually in camera, as you can see up there right up in the corner, 11 millimeters is the equivalent that we're getting because we've added on the 0.71x adapter. So just keep in mind when you're using your wider lenses, a 16 millimeter now becomes 11 millimeters. It is super wide, guys. I don't know if you can see this, but basically you can see my whole studio room set up here, and my wingspan is, roughly 6 feet, about the same length as this table, and we're still getting probably another foot or two on either side. So we're getting a huge, huge range here, and you'll want to be aware of that when you're getting your wider lenses on this camera using the adapter. Now, I'm going to jump ahead to the 35 millimeter range, which is the furthest end of what this lens can do, just so we can figure out what we're getting millimeters wise in camera, and you can get a better idea of what 35 millimeters will give you an equivalent of when using this adapter. So now we're at the 35 millimeter range of the 16 to 35 f2.8 lens on the Canon C70 while using the 0.71x adapter. As you can see here, 35 millimeters is now becoming a 25 millimeter equivalent in camera when using this adapter, which, as you know, is acting as a speed booster, and that's why we're still able to keep an f2.0 when this lens is actually an f2.8. So we're getting a little bit more light in through the lens, which is phenomenal and probably going to help out a lot of people that had those f2.8 lenses and weren't quite ready to make the leap to the f1.4 lenses. And at the end of the day, I don't know a lot of people that are shooting completely wide open at f1.4. There's certainly times that will call for it, but I think that it's not totally necessary, at least in our setup for the corporate setting. But just wanted to give you another example of what this looks like. Again, this is the 16 to 35 millimeter lens at the far end. So at 35 millimeters, we're getting 25 millimeters in camera, and you can see all the settings right up there in the corner. We haven't changed anything. We're still YDR 709, we're 4096 by 2160, and this is the 160 megabit per second setting. So, I'm going to be uploading this to YouTube. It's obviously not going to have that bit rate when we upload it, but I just wanted to give you an example of fresh out of the camera, Rec. 709, if you're not trying to go ahead and shoot log or anything like that, I guess the question becomes, could you have just a nice clean image straight out of camera that you don't really have to do a whole lot of color work to? My lighting here, just so that you're aware, is the Aperture 120D. This is the Mark II model, and I'm using the Light Dome Mark II as well with an egg crate inside of it. And then I've also got off to the side a FotodioX FlapJack light. And this is the panel, the square panel, and that's just acting as my fill. And then the circular FotodioX panel is in the back doing a little bit of work on the hair, but not a whole lot from here. So I'll definitely be working to adjust this setup as we get moving, maybe get a few more lights in here, but I hope that this gives you a good example of what this looks like. And before we move forward, I wanted to cover a couple pieces of equipment that I thought you might be curious about. One is the microphone that I'm using. This is the Sennheiser MKE, I believe 600. I'll go ahead and leave a link to that microphone in the comment or in the description down below so that you guys know exactly what model I'm using. And as you know, the Canon C70 has a different type of XLR connection now. So we've got to go from the smaller XLR connection to a full-size XLR. And these adapters, I think, are pretty cool so far. I don't know how well they're going to hold up over time, and I'll certainly be exploring others, but I'll leave a link to these below. They were fairly affordable, and they seem to be working well so far. So I'll make sure that I leave a link down in the description for you so you can get your chance at buying one of those. And if you have any questions, any comments, certainly make sure that you leave those down below in the comment section. I'll do my best to try to address those. Let's go ahead and jump over to our last lens, which is the Canon 70-200 f2.8, and this is the image stabilized model. I believe it's version 2. This is the Canon 70-200 f2.8, and as you probably noticed, we're actually at f2.0 down there on the bottom. So the Speedbooster is still working and doing its job right here, and the 70mm side of the lens is actually giving us 50mm with our adapter. And let's go ahead and hop over to the 200mm range just to see what we're getting. Now, I'm going to warn you, I'm going to have to move the camera back a good distance in order to do this effectively because it's just going to be zoomed in. You're going to see all the pores on my nose, and I don't look that great on camera as it is. So this is 70mm currently on the lens, 50mm in camera as the equivalent because we're working with our handy dandy adapter. So let's hop over and see what the 200mm side gives us. So this is the shot that we're getting on the 70-200mm lens all the way at the 200mm range. We're currently at 142mm as the equivalent in camera using the Speedbooster. As you can see, I had to move the camera way back, so our depth is kind of crazy here. The whole background is compressed, and this is a very, very close-up shot, pretty uncomfortable. And personally, I wouldn't be using this for a whole lot of reasons, but we'd probably be looking at a different type of lens, keeping the camera a little closer. There's a lot of stuff that could be done there. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button below. Give me a thumbs up if you want to see more content just like this, and feel free to comment if you have any questions, anything that you want me to test out in camera. I'd love to try out some new things for you. And one note I'm actually going to make is this particular video, this portion of it was filmed after the initial filming because I noticed that there were some weird things going on with the audio. When I brought the footage into edit, the audio levels seemed to be kind of all over the place. They were kind of auto adjusting, and that's not what I had them set to. It was set to manual, so I'm curious if there were maybe some settings in camera that I missed, and I'll be exploring that and then keeping you posted as to what happened there. But hopefully this sounds good to you, and thanks again so much for watching. I really do appreciate you giving us a like and subscribe just to follow the channel, and we'll see you next time.